The bridge of the Galactic survey vessel hummed with quiet efficiency as senior researcher Zix studied the readings from Sector 47. Their tentacles moved gracefully across the holographic display, dismissing system after system marked as uninhabitable due to stellar instability. Something caught their attention, a faint signal emanating from a system they had almost overlooked. The source was a small blue planet, third from its star. What made Zix pause wasn't the signal itself, but its origin point. According to all established scientific principles, nothing should be alive in that system, let alone broadcasting complex electromagnetic patterns into space. Lieutenant Mira, verify these readings, Zix called to their assistant. The young Centaurian glided over, their crystalline form refracting the soft light of the bridge. As they processed the data, their usual purple hue was shifted to a startled orange. Senior researcher, these readings suggest advanced technological activity, but that's impossible. The star in this system is a Class G yellow dwarf in its middle age. The radiation levels alone should prevent any complex life from developing. Zix adjusted their sensory membranes, focusing all four eyes on the detailed scan results. The star was indeed highly active, regularly ejecting massive solar flares and coronal mass ejections that would sterilize most habitable zones. Yet there it was, undeniable evidence of civilization. The data streamed in, artificial satellites orbiting the planet, radio and television broadcasts, internet signals, and even primitive spacecraft venturing beyond their atmosphere. All of this activity was happening under conditions that the Galactic Survey classified as extreme hazard zone. How are they surviving? Mira wondered aloud, their crystalline form now pulsing with curiosity. The solar wind alone should have stripped their atmosphere ages ago. Zix initiated a deeper scan, revealing more surprises. The planet had a robust magnetic field, protecting it from the worst of their star's tantrums. But what truly astonished them was the inhabitants' reaction to solar events. Their monitoring systems detected a massive solar flare heading toward the planet. Yet there was no panic, no mass evacuation, not even a pause in their regular activities. Instead, their satellites adjusted their positions slightly. Power grids redistributed their loads, and some of their communication channels actually increased their activity, discussing something called aurora forecasts with excitement rather than fear. Look at their cities, Zix gestured to the holographic display. They're building on the surface. Not underground, not in heavily shielded bunkers, but right there under the open sky. The images showed sprawling metropolitan areas, agricultural regions, and transportation networks, all exposed to their star's constant radiation. The most baffling discovery came when they analyzed the inhabitants themselves. These humans, as they called themselves in their broadcasts, weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Their population numbered in the billions, their technology was advancing rapidly, and their culture showed no signs of being a species under siege. Senior researcher, Mira's voice carried a note of urgency. According to their own historical records, they've been living under these conditions for their entire evolutionary history. They don't even seem to realize how extraordinary this is. Zix made a decision. This discovery was too important to keep to themselves. They opened a secure channel to Galactic Survey Command, their tentacles trembling slightly as they composed the message. Priority 1 report. Discovered advanced civilization in Sector 47, System G273. Indigenous species has achieved spaceflight capability while inhabiting primary habitable zone of an active Class G star. Population shows no signs of radiation stress or stellar fear response. Requesting immediate diplomatic contact authorization. Note, their adaptation to these conditions may be crucial for our understanding of stellar survival strategies. As they waited for a response, Zix watched the holographic display of Earth rotating peacefully in space, its cities glittering under the fierce glare of their sun. A solar flare erupted, sending a burst of energy toward the planet. Instead of disaster, the planet's magnetic field caught the radiation, creating shimmering curtains of light in its polar regions. A deadly stellar event transformed into a light show. Remarkable, Six whispered, all four eyes fixed on the display. Simply remarkable. Ambassador Vera stood on the bridge of the Galactic Council's emergency response vessel, their iridescent scales reflecting the harsh light of Earth's sun. The ship's protective shields were operating at maximum capacity, yet the stellar radiation readings still made their internal organs quiver with ancestral fear. Status report on the approach vector, Vera commanded, trying to maintain composure as another solar flare erupted from the star's turbulent surface. Ambassador, we're detecting numerous Earth vessels in our designated path, reported Navigator Kill, their mechanical limbs adjusting the holographic controls. They appear to be continuing their normal operations despite the ongoing solar storm. The bridge crew watched in disbelief as human spacecraft maneuvered through the solar wind with casual indifference. A particularly large vessel, which their database identified as a cargo transport, passed directly through a region of space that their own sensors marked as a radiation danger zone. Impossible, muttered Chief Scientist Dorn, their crystalline antenna vibrating with confusion. Their shielding technology must be centuries ahead of ours. But when they scanned the human vessels, they found only basic radiation protection, nothing that could explain such fearless navigation. The ship's communication array chimed with an incoming message. This is Houston Space Control. Welcome to Earth. Please proceed to the designated coordinates for atmospheric entry. Current solar activity is moderate, with a 60% chance of visible auroras during your landing. Vera exchanged bewildered looks with their crew. Moderate activity. Their own sensors classified the current conditions as severe hazard level. As they descended through Earth's atmosphere, following their escort of human fighters, the emergency response team witnessed something that challenged their fundamental understanding of civilization. Cities sprawled across the landscape, their buildings reaching boldly toward the sky, parks filled with humans lounging in direct starlight. Solar panels, actual devices designed to capture their star's energy, covered rooftops and fields. The landing site was an open-air facility in a place called Geneva. As the delegation prepared to disembark, Safety Officer Lux rushed forward with urgent concerns. Ambassador, the local radiation levels are above our recommended exposure limits. We should insist on an underground facility for the meeting. Before Vera could respond, their sensors detected another solar flare. The crew braced for emergency protocols, but through the view screens, they watched humans casually checking their personal devices, some even pointing cameras at the sky. Magnificent aurora expected tonight, their human greeting party announced cheerfully as they stepped onto the landing pad. We've arranged for the reception to be held in the rooftop garden to give you the best view. Rooftop. Lux practically squeaked, their protective scales flaring in distress. During a solar event, the human diplomat, Dr. Sarah Chen, smiled warmly. Of course, it's not every day we get to share Earth's natural light show with our galactic neighbors. Don't worry, our magnetic field handles most of the particles. The rest just gives us a beautiful display. The alien delegation followed their hosts into the facility, flinching at every shaft of sunlight through the windows. They watched in amazement as humans went about their daily routines, children played in courtyards, and maintenance workers repaired outdoor equipment, all under the direct glare of their active star. During the elevator ride to the rooftop garden, Dr. Chen checked her phone. Oh, looks like we're in for a strong geomagnetic storm. The aurora should be visible even at this latitude. The aliens huddled under the provided shade structures, their environmental suits working overtime, as their hosts circulated with refreshments and casual conversation. A brilliant green curtain of light began to dance across the darkening sky, the visible manifestation of the very particles their species had evolved to fear. Beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Chen said, noticing Vera's fixed gaze on the aurora. This is why we built the reception hall with a transparent ceiling. It's not every day the sun puts on such a spectacular show. Vera watched a human child nearby pointing excitedly at the lights, her parents explaining the solar science behind the display with pride rather than warning. In that moment, the ambassador realized their mission had completely changed. They hadn't come to save humans from their star. They had come to learn how humans had conquered their fear of it. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled alien delegation in the Earth Sciences Auditorium, her presentation screen showing a brilliant image of the sun. The visitors had initially protested meeting in a room with windows, but curiosity had finally overcome their instinctive fear. What you see as a threat, we see as the foundation of life itself. She began, gesturing to a series of photographs showing Earth's diverse ecosystems. Every plant, every animal, every breath of oxygen on our planet exists because of our star's energy. The alien scientists shifted uncomfortably in their protective suits as she pulled up a diagram of photosynthesis. Chief Scientist Dorn raised a crystalline appendage. "You mean to tell us that your plant life deliberately captures stellar radiation?" "Exactly," Sarah smiled, advancing to the next slide showing children playing in a sunlit park. "And we've evolved alongside these plants. Our bodies need sunlight to produce vitamin D, essential for our bone health and immune system. We've adapted to not just survive under our sun, but to depend on it." The delegation murmured in disbelief. Ambassador Vera leaned forward, their scales shimmering with interest. "But surely you understand the dangers. The radiation, the solar flares, the constant bombardment of particles." Sarah nodded, switching to a historical timeline. "Of course, we've studied our sun for centuries. We've learned to predict its moods, to protect ourselves when necessary, and to harness its power. Look at this." The screen displayed a massive solar farm in the Sahara Desert. "We've turned our star's energy into electricity, using it to power our civilization. Those same rays you shield yourselves from drive our economy, heat our homes, and fuel our progress." She paused as several aliens raised their appendages in alarm at a real-time alert of incoming solar activity. "Ah, perfect timing. Let's step outside for a practical demonstration." Despite their obvious reluctance, the delegation followed her onto the observation deck. Above them, the sky rippled with waves of magnetic disturbance, visible even in daylight. Sarah pointed to several nearby buildings. "Watch the solar panels. See how they're adjusting their angle. Our systems automatically optimize energy collection during solar events. What you consider a catastrophe, we've turned into an opportunity." A group of university students walked past, some pausing to take selfies with the strange aurora in the background. The aliens watched in fascination as humans went about their daily lives under what their societies would consider emergency conditions. But the long-term effects, Safety Officer Lux began, their protective scales fully extended. Sarah brought up her tablet, showing medical data. "We've evolved remarkable DNA repair mechanisms. Yes, we take precautions against excessive exposure, but our bodies are adapted to life under this star. We even developed early warning systems using animal behavior. Some Earth creatures can sense coming solar storms before our instruments detect them." The presentation continued with images of human culture, ancient sun gods, solar calendars, summer festivals, and beach holidays. Our star shapes not just our biology, but our culture. We celebrate it in our art, our religions, our daily routines. A small bird landed on the deck railing, spreading its wings to bask in the sunlight. The alien delegation watched in amazement as the creature deliberately exposed itself to the stellar radiation, clearly enjoying the warmth. "That's a common sight on Earth," Sarah explained. "From the smallest microorganisms to the largest animals, life here has learned to love the light." She concluded with a series of stunning photographs. Sunrises over mountains, sunsets across oceans, solar eclipses, and auroras dancing above both poles. "This is why we build our cities under open skies, why we venture out into space without fear of solar storms. Our star isn't our enemy. It's our oldest friend, our constant companion, our source of life and inspiration." As if to emphasize her point, the magnetic disturbance overhead intensified, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The alien scientists hurriedly checked their radiation meters, while human observers gathered at windows and balconies, phones raised to capture the spectacle. Dr. Chen smiled at the contrast. "We have a saying on Earth. Every sunset is a promise of a new dawn. Perhaps it's time for the galaxy to see our kind of star in a new light." The emergency alert echoed through both human and alien communication channels. A massive X-class solar flare was heading directly toward Earth, followed by one of the largest coronal mass ejections ever recorded. Inside the Galactic Council's ship, chaos erupted. "All personnel to emergency stations," Commander Zex ordered, their crystalline form pulsing with urgent patterns. "Initiate maximum shield protocols. Begin evacuation procedures for our ground team." The ship's sensors were practically screaming with warning signals. According to their calculations, the incoming solar event would create conditions lethal to most known forms of life. Yet when they contacted Earth's Space Weather Prediction Center, they received a surprisingly calm response. "Thank you for your concern," the human operator replied cheerfully. "Yes, we're tracking the CME. Power companies have been notified, satellite trajectories are being adjusted, and Aurora photographers are setting up their equipment. Standard procedure for an event of this magnitude." Commander Zex stared at their communication screen in disbelief. "You don't understand. Our readings indicate this will be catastrophic. Your surface installations will be exposed to extreme radiation." "Oh, we understand completely," the operator responded. "We've already adjusted the power grids to handle any surges, and our magnetic field will handle the rest. Though we do appreciate the heads-up, the aurora should be visible much further south than usual." On the planet below, the alien delegation watched in growing horror as humans seemed to treat the approaching stellar bombardment like a minor weather event. Instead of seeking shelter in underground bunkers, they were organizing viewing parties. The first waves of charged particles began arriving. The ship's outer shields flickered under the assault, their advanced technology struggling to cope with the intensity. Emergency backup systems activated automatically. "Shields at 70% and dropping," reported the ship's engineer, their mechanical appendages working frantically across multiple control panels. "These radiation levels are beyond our design parameters." Yet through their observation screens, they watched human satellites continuing to function, protected by seemingly primitive shielding technology. Earth's power grids automatically redistributed loads, compensating for electromagnetic fluctuations that would have crippled most planetary infrastructures. In major cities, the only visible response was the activation of surge protectors and the occasional flickering of aurora lights in previously unseen latitudes. News channels broadcast excited reports about the spectacular solar show expected that evening. "Look at their magnetic field," Chief Scientist Dorn observed, gesturing to the sensor readings. "It's not just deflecting the particles, it's channeling them toward the poles. The entire planet is acting like a perfectly designed solar storm shelter." As the hours passed, the alien crew watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. Their own shields continued to degrade, forcing them to divert power from non-essential systems. Meanwhile, Earth's defenses held firm, protecting its inhabitants with such efficiency that most humans seemed unaware of the danger they were casually dismissing. "Their children are still in school," Safety Officer Lux noted incredulously, monitoring surface activities. "Their aircraft are still flying. They're still holding outdoor sporting events." The storm peaked just as night fell over the Western Hemisphere. The sky erupted in curtains of green, blue, and rare red aurora, creating displays visible even from the equator. Instead of panic, the event inspired millions of humans to step outside, cameras ready, to admire the lights. Social media channels flooded with aurora photographs. Scientists excitedly gathered data. Power companies calmly managed their grids. It was, by all human accounts, an interesting but hardly disruptive event. As the storm began to subside, the alien ship's systems slowly recovered. Their sensors recorded radiation levels that should have caused mass extinction, yet Earth remained unchanged. If anything, the planet seemed more alive, energized by its interaction with its star. Commander Zex composed a message to Galactic Council headquarters, their usual formal tone tinged with awe. Witnessed unprecedented stellar event. Human planetary defenses exceeded all known technological standards, despite appearing primitively simple, requesting immediate research delegation. These humans don't just survive their star's attacks. They've turned them into a resource. We have much to learn. Below, the aurora continued to dance across the night sky, a reminder that what one civilization saw as a catastrophe, another had learned to embrace as a light show. In the high-security laboratory beneath Geneva's International Science Complex, Chief Scientist Dorn peered through an advanced microscope at a sample of human tissue. Their crystalline appendages trembled slightly as they adjusted the controls, increasing the magnification to observe the cellular repair mechanisms in real time. "This defies everything we know about biology," they whispered to the assembled team of alien researchers. "Watch what happens when we expose the sample to radiation levels that would destroy any other known species' DNA." The human cells glowed under the controlled burst of radiation. Instead of deteriorating, they immediately began repairing themselves, their DNA reconstruction mechanisms working with extraordinary efficiency. Dr. Chen stood nearby, suppressing a smile as the alien scientists crowded around the display screens. "We've identified 47 distinct repair pathways," she explained, pulling up detailed molecular diagrams. "Most species we studied have fewer than 10. Our bodies have evolved these mechanisms over millions of years of living under our active sun." Safety Officer Lux, who had finally agreed to remove their protective suit within the lab, moved closer to examine the data. "But the energy cost must be enormous. How do you maintain such complex repair systems?" "That's the truly fascinating part," Dr. Chen responded, switching to a different display. "We don't just repair the damage. We've adapted to use some forms of radiation to our advantage. Look at these metabolic pathways." The screen showed how human cells could transform certain types of solar radiation into beneficial biological processes. The alien researchers' data crystals worked overtime, recording everything they observed. "Your entire cellular structure," Dorn noted, their voice filled with wonder. "It's not just resistant to your star's output. It's optimized for it. You've turned a lethal environment into an evolutionary advantage." In the next room, another team of researchers examined human technology. Solar panels that could maintain peak efficiency during solar storms, radiation-hardened electronics that were remarkably simple yet effective, and building materials that could withstand extreme space weather while remaining lightweight and cost-effective. "We had to adapt," Dr. Chen explained, leading them to a sealed chamber containing experimental equipment. "Our earliest ancestors evolved under these conditions. Every step of our technological development had to account for our star's activity. We couldn't hide from it, so we learned to work with it instead." The alien scientists watched as she demonstrated their latest innovation, a device that could convert solar storm energy directly into usable power. During the recent massive solar event, Earth's power grids hadn't just survived. They'd harvested enough excess energy to power several major cities for weeks. "Your species," Ambassador Vera observed, entering the laboratory with their diplomatic escort, "didn't just survive in what we considered a death zone. You've turned it into the foundation of your civilization's advancement." Dr. Chen nodded, pulling up historical data showing how solar activity had influenced human development. Every challenge our star presented became an opportunity for innovation. Our medicine, our technology, our architecture, they've all evolved to thrive under these conditions. The research team's findings were revolutionary. Human DNA repair mechanisms could potentially be adapted to help other species survive in similar stellar environments. Their radiation handling technology, despite its apparent simplicity, was more effective than the most advanced alien shields. "There's something poetic about it," Dorn mused, recording their final observations. "The very star we thought would make your planet uninhabitable instead forced your species to develop capabilities we never imagined possible." As the day's research session concluded, the alien scientists gathered their samples and data, each finding their previous assumptions transformed. What they had seen as a hostile environment was actually an incubator for extraordinary adaptation and innovation. Dr. Chen sealed the laboratory for the night, glancing out a window at the setting sun. Its light, filtered through the atmosphere, painted the sky in brilliant colors. "You know," she said to the departing alien delegation, "we have a saying. Pressure creates diamonds. Living under our active star wasn't easy, but it made us who we are." The aliens left the facility with more than just research data. They carried with them a profound realization. Sometimes, the most challenging environments forge the most remarkable strengths. Ambassador Vera stood before the United Nations Security Council, their scales reflecting the morning sunlight streaming through the chamber's windows. The usual diplomatic protocols had been set aside for an emergency session that would reshape galactic history. Distinguished representatives of Earth, they began, their translator conveying the gravity in their voice. "What we're about to share will fundamentally change our relationship. We didn't come to your world merely out of scientific curiosity." The holographic display behind them activated, showing a map of the galaxy. Dozens of star systems flickered with warning indicators. Across the galaxy, previously stable stars are becoming more active. Systems that housed thriving colonies for centuries are experiencing unprecedented stellar activity. We're losing worlds, research stations, and entire habitation zones. Dr. Chen, now serving as Earth's chief scientific liaison, leaned forward in her seat as data streamed across her tablet. The patterns were unmistakable. Stars throughout the galaxy were beginning to behave more like Earth's sun. "Our model suggests this is a natural cycle," Vera continued, their scales shifting to a somber blue. "One that occurs roughly every 50,000 years. Our civilizations evolved during a period of unusual stellar stability. That era is ending." The chamber filled with murmurs as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't alone in the galaxy because they were primitive. They were alone because they were the only ones who could survive these conditions. Chief Scientist Dorn stepped forward, their crystalline form refracting the sunlight. "Our colonies are failing. Our shields cannot withstand the increased stellar activity. Our biology isn't adapted to these radiation levels, but yours is. We need your help," Vera stated simply, setting aside their diplomatic reserve. "Not just your technology or your scientific knowledge, but your perspective. Your species doesn't just endure these conditions, you thrive in them. You've turned what we see as catastrophic into normal, even beneficial." The Secretary General rose to address the chamber. "You're asking us to share our survival strategies, our adaptive technologies." "More than that," Vera replied. "We're asking you to teach us how to live without fear of the stars. Your children play under open skies. Your cities reach toward the heavens. Your ships sail through solar storms that would send our fleets running. This is the knowledge we need." Dr. Chen projected her own data onto the display. The radiation levels they're experiencing now match what Earth considers moderate solar activity. Their colonies are facing conditions we deal with during our quieter solar cycles. "Exactly," Dorn confirmed. "What you consider normal, our civilizations see as apocalyptic. But we must adapt or face the loss of centuries of expansion and development." The chamber grew quiet as the human representatives processed this reversal of roles. They had prepared for first contact expecting to be the students, learning from advanced alien civilizations. Instead, they were being asked to become teachers. "There's more," Vera added, their scales shifting to show urgency. "We've detected similar stellar changes beginning in your sector. Within a decade, your sun's activity will increase beyond even your historical records. We offer a trade. Help us survive our present, and we'll help you prepare for your future." Screens around the chamber displayed technical data, colonial evacuation reports, and stellar forecasts. The gallery of human scientists and officials studied the information, recognizing patterns they'd seen in their own solar research. The Secretary General surveyed the chamber before speaking. Throughout human history, we've faced countless challenges from our star. Each time, we've adapted, innovated, and emerged stronger. Now we learn that this very struggle has prepared us to help others. Dr. Chen stood, addressing both human and alien delegates. We'll need to establish training programs, share technological specifications, and develop new protocols for stellar survival. But more importantly, we need to share our perspective, our understanding that an active star isn't an enemy to be feared, but a challenge to be embraced. Vera's scales shifted to a color of hope. Your species has called the death zone home for so long, you've forgotten it was supposed to be impossible. Perhaps that's exactly the wisdom our galaxy needs right now. As the chamber erupted in discussion about implementation plans, a solar flare alert flashed across the monitoring screens. Nobody flinched. Instead, human and alien representatives alike turned to watch the approaching light show, seeing it through new eyes, not as a threat, but as a glimpse of their shared future. The International Space Academy, once Earth's premier astronaut training facility, had transformed into the galaxy's most unique educational institution. Alien scientists from 100 worlds crowded the observation deck, watching solar prominences dance across the surface of the sun through specially designed filters. Dr. Chen stood before the assembled group, pointing to a particularly active sunspot region. Notice the magnetic field fluctuations. These patterns indicate a potential coronal mass ejection within the next 12 hours. But watch how our satellite network is already adjusting. The alien students, still wearing lightweight protective suits despite months of acclimation training, monitored their instruments with growing confidence. They had learned to read the sun's moods, to predict its outbursts, and most importantly, to work with its energy rather than hide from it. Remember, she continued, your civilizations have the technology. What we're teaching you is a new way of thinking. Solar storms aren't your enemy. They're opportunities for energy harvesting and atmospheric enrichment. In orbit above them, the first joint human-alien solar research station tracked the developing solar event. Its hybrid design combined Earth's radiation handling experience with advanced alien propulsion and sensing technology. The station's crew, a mix of species, worked together with practiced ease, their former fears of stellar radiation replaced by professional respect for its power. Commander Zex, once terrified of approaching Earth's star, now led the station's research team. Energy spike detected in Sector 7, they announced over the command channel. Preparing collection arrays according to human protocols. Below, in the Academy's engineering wing, Safety Officer Lux guided another group through the construction of simplified radiation shields. The breakthrough was learning to work with your local star's magnetic field rather than trying to block it entirely. They explained, their own protective scales now permanently relaxed. Human design principles taught us that sometimes less shielding, properly aligned, works better than brute force protection. The latest solar forecasting models, combining human experience with alien computational power, had increased prediction accuracy by 300%. Colonial emergency evacuations had become rare as new settlements incorporated Earth-inspired adaptive architecture and infrastructure from the beginning. In the Botanical Research Dome, alien botanists studied Earth plants, marveling at their efficient use of solar radiation. The first experimental gardens using modified Earth species were already thriving on formerly uninhabitable worlds, their adapted photosynthesis processes turning deadly radiation levels into biological energy. Your DNA repair mechanisms, Chief Scientist Dorn lectured in the medical laboratory, evolved through millions of years of solar exposure. We've identified key sequences that could be adapted to help other species develop similar resilience. The Academy's success had spawned similar facilities across Earth, each specialized in different aspects of stellar survival: agriculture under variable radiation conditions, power grid management during solar storms, construction techniques for exposed environments. Knowledge that humans had taken for granted was revolutionizing galactic civilization. Dr. Chen walked through the Academy's main hall, now lined with images showing successfully adapted colonies. Worlds that had been abandoned as solar activity increased were being resettled using human-inspired technologies and techniques. Cities domed with radiation-responsive materials allowed their inhabitants to see the sky for the first time in generations. The latest reports from the Centauri colonies are excellent. Her alien assistant reported, no longer flinching at the sunlight streaming through the windows. Their first surface city opened last week. The children are especially enjoying the direct stellar observation classes. In the Academy's research center, human and alien scientists worked side by side, developing new applications for Earth's solar handling techniques. They had already created more efficient energy collection systems, better radiation-resistant materials, and improved biological protection methods. As the predicted coronal mass ejection began, the Academy students gathered in the unshielded observation dome, a test of their growing comfort with solar activity. They watched in appreciative silence as waves of energy washed over Earth's magnetic field, creating spectacular auroral displays. Beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Chen asked, standing among her alien students. This is the final exam that matters most, seeing beauty where you once saw only danger. The assembly of alien scientists murmured in agreement, their various environmental sensors recording the event not as a catastrophe, but as a natural phenomenon to be studied, understood, and even admired. The galaxy was learning Earth's greatest lesson, that the light of knowledge could transform any fear, even fear of the stars themselves. 5 years after Earth joined the galactic community, the observatory platform in high orbit hosted an unprecedented celebration. Representatives from 200 stellar nations gathered to witness the inauguration of the first multi-species solar research institute, a massive station designed to orbit directly through the corona of a young, energetic star. Ambassador Vera, their scales now permanently tuned to a confident blue, addressed the assembled delegates. Today marks not just the completion of a scientific facility, but the beginning of a new era. Thanks to humanity's guidance, the galaxy no longer fears its stars. We embrace them. The main display showed live feeds from across known space. Former dead zones buzzed with activity as colonies flourished around yellow dwarfs, similar to Earth's sun. Solar power stations harvested energy from stellar storms that would have once sent entire civilizations fleeing in terror. Dr. Chen, recently appointed as the Institute's director, stepped forward. When we first met, you thought we were trapped in a death zone. Now look at us. We're building research stations inside stellar coronas. Together, we've turned the impossible into routine. The station's design showcased this transformation. Its adaptive shields, based on Earth technology, but enhanced by alien innovations, allowed unprecedented close observation of stellar phenomena. Research modules could extend directly into the star's outer layers, gathering data that would have been unthinkable just years ago. The latest census is remarkable. Chief Scientist Dorn reported, their crystalline form refracting the light of Earth's sun. Over 10,000 new settlements established in previously uninhabitable systems, stellar energy production up 800%, and the first generation of children born on these worlds are showing natural adaptation to their local stars. The medical bay of the new institute contained dedicated facilities for studying these adaptations. Human DNA repair mechanisms, once unique in the galaxy, were being successfully merged with alien biology. The children of 100 worlds now played under open skies, their bodies gradually developing the same resilience that humanity had evolved over millions of years. Perhaps most significant, Commander X added, directing attention to another display, is the cultural shift. Our civilizations no longer build underground. We no longer hide from our stars. We've learned to dance with them, as humans say. The evidence was visible in architectural designs across the galaxy. Cities reached skyward with radiation-responsive materials that turned solar storms into light shows. Agricultural domains expanded into previously dangerous regions, using modified Earth crops that thrived in high-radiation environments. A surge of energy from the nearby star caused the station's shields to shimmer. Years ago, such an event would have triggered panic. Now, the assembled delegates merely adjusted their viewing filters to better observe the phenomenon. The Galactic Survey has officially redesignated all Class G stellar systems, Vera announced proudly. They're no longer marked as hazard zones. Instead, they're classified as high-energy development regions. Already, we're seeing species voluntarily relocating to these systems for their abundant energy and research opportunities. The ceremony reached its climax as the station's main research probe extended into the star's corona. Data began flowing immediately, adding to the galaxy's growing understanding of stellar physics. But more than scientific knowledge was being gathered. Each observation reinforced the new perspective that humanity had taught them. Earth's designation has also been updated, Dr. Chen added with a smile. We're now officially listed as Cradle of Stellar Pioneers. Not bad for a civilization that was supposedly doomed by its star. The gathered delegates raised their glasses in a toast, each drink specifically designed for their species, as the star beneath them pulsed with energy. The very forces that had once threatened to divide the galaxy had become the source of its greatest unity. To the future, Vera proclaimed, their scales reflecting the stellar light. To a galaxy where no star is feared, no world is uninhabitable, and no challenge is insurmountable when we face it together. As if in response, a massive solar flare erupted from the star below, its energy caught and channeled by the station's collectors. The assembled representatives watched in appreciation as the power was distributed through the new galactic energy grid, bringing light to worlds that had once lived in fear of such displays. Humanity had not just survived in the death zone. They had shown the galaxy how to turn it into a cradle of life, proving that sometimes the most challenging environments forge the strongest bonds between stars and those who learn to dance with them.